Hello everyone. Today is Sunday the 26th of January in 2020, or at least that is the year we are told that it is. Had an interesting experience at the hospital today, and everything's okay. It's just, doctor's offices are closed on Sunday. Urgent care was closed, and so we had to go get it looked at. We had to go get something looked at. But anyways, my wife and I were in there for, 5 hours or something like that until she got released. And we were sitting out in the front foyer for most of the time in the emergency room. And all these people around us are just like sick right now, right? Because of like bronchitis and the flu, and then this whole whatever is going on with the Chinese virus, flu virus or whatever it is, which is being, isolated to a couple areas in the U.S. where it's already kind of taken place. Nothing here in Arizona, according to the hospitals anyways. It's all on the East Coast. So sorry for any of you that are over there. And depending on what part of the East Coast you're on, depends on whether or not it's an occurrence. I also heard there was something like going on up in maybe Washington State, but excuse me, I'm not totally sure. Anyways, so we're in the hospital, and there's, like I said, there's a bunch of sick people. And, you go to the emergency clinic, and especially around this time of the year, in the winter season, you're always bound to have a lot of people who are in there with the flu things and stuff like that. No one to speak of for really any serious accidents that I could see. It was mostly just all sick symptoms. So anyways, they finally get us to go into the back to see the doctors, and there are no rooms available. So they got like gurneys up and down all the hallways. And I'm like, oh, kind of weird. And the nurse was like, well, it's the only way you guys will get seen right away. If you want to wait for a room, we can put you back out into the waiting room area, but it could be another hour to 2 hours or longer. We don't know. And we're like, we want to get through it. We want to see what's going on, find out, what the issues are, and either become admitted, or move on. So, yes, and in case you're wondering, I'm not going to tell you the whole story of what happened and why we were there and all that stuff. We just needed to go. So, anyways, but so we're sitting there in the corridor by one of the nurses' stations, and really nice, nurses in there and stuff like that, and kind of joking conversations, trying to keep things light in talks and stuff like that. And all of a sudden we hear this like loud moaning coming from down the hall. Not like a ghost, but like someone was kind of like hurt or in pain, and it's just like a like someone's like really, really in serious pain. Then this guy starts screaming for a doctor, screaming for a nurse, screaming for help. Then he quickly turns into saying, I'm going to kill you as soon as I get out of here. I'm going to bite your head. I mean, it's just like total craziness. And then he goes into that he's, choking, and then he's having a heart attack, and I mean, all these crazy things. And I'm like, wow. Now, I've been into some of the bad areas before, like back in Detroit or even downtown Phoenix. And you'll get some of that from the people who are strung out on drugs. Back in the day, they would come in, and they would have their minds would just be completely in left field or in a different place, and they, as they're tweaked out of their mind, they would do the same kind of things. But not in Gilbert. This hospital is in a prime area of Gilbert, and Gilbert's got a lot of Mormon families, a lot of mid to high income families and stuff like that out there. So you don't really get a lot of that kind of effect, even out and about. I mean, in general, we don't see the homeless people, we don't see drugs, we don't see all that stuff. Every now and again, you get one or two randoms, but not in general. So it seemed a little odd. And the nurse, she apologized to us, and she's like, "I'm sorry, this is all that's available, but it's never a dull moment." And I'm like, well, it's fine and it's happening. I said, is he going to be all right? I mean, is this something when this happens on the, I'm assuming an odd occasion that you guys would just, what do you call the police department? And she's like, well, no, we don't call the police department. We have our own internal security that deals with that. And I'm like, oh. And I'm thinking like, okay, like hospitals would have their RNs, and then they have like like when you see like on the insane asylum, different things about those, that they have the orderlies, right, that keep things in order. And she said, well, same thing. They've got some orderlies, or security guards and stuff like that, and they deal with everything internally themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, because the guy's just like going on and he's just cussing everyone out and dropping F-bombs and being loud and out of control. And I'm like, that's a little special that's going on there. And she said, oh, that's nothing. It's happening all the time now. And when she said that, my wife and I, she's sitting over here at the nurse station, so she can't see our faces, and we're kind of talking over the top of her monitor. And when she said that, I turned and I looked at Ruth Ann, and she looked at me, and we both kind of like raised our eyebrows. And I was like, did you catch that? And she's like, yeah. And Ruth Ann and I talked about it before, about with the Mandela effect, this quantum effect, how to the, what we'll call NPCs, or the normies, or the normal people, as it were, we all can sound like batshit crazy. And if you think back, maybe 100 or 200 years ago, with North America specifically, and I know it happened over in Europe and everything else, but like insane asylums were like running rampant. Like there was tons of them all over the place, and they were filled to the gill. And now all of a sudden you don't even hear about it hardly at all. I mean, they still have them. They don't have insane asylums, right? They have, typically treatment facilities, as they'll call it, or whatever. But they're low key. Like, you don't hear about them that often. Sometimes hospitals will have a wing, but not like they did back in the day. And it was really, really difficult nowadays to find hospitals that actually have an insane ward in there, or a division of the hospital that is specifically for those patients who are in a mental disorder state. When this hospital here in Gilbert that we were at said, well, they don't even have like a padded wall wing or anything like that. They don't typically deal with that. And I was like, well, do any of the hospitals around? And from my knowledge, they don't. So I said, well, okay. So I turned back to the girl and I said, what do you mean by like it's happening all the time? It just seems like an odd thing to say, being as we're in the prime heart of Gilbert, and this area is pretty affluent financially, and most of the people seem pretty straightforward, down to earth, or they're religious, more so religious people than anything else. And she said, it's just happening a lot more often. And she thought, she said she does a traveling residency. So originally this girl was from West Virginia, I think. And she said not in the city, but in the outskirts, they would get a lot of people doing like meth and other drugs. Not a lot, but enough. And then she had transferred over and done a stint in Texas. And wherever she was stationed at in Texas, apparently like everyone and their brother does meth. Like socially, or just all the time, nonstop. And she said she's treated even grandmothers who come in that, she has to ask the question, like all the hospitals ask you about doing drugs and everything else, and they always say, oh yeah, like meth, but on occasion. And I said, on occasion? I mean, I did a lot of stuff as a kid, even a young adult, and yeah, it would be on occasion, but if you're doing that, you're doing that. There is no on occasion or off occasion, right? You're either doing it nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then you typically end up dead in a couple of years, or you might only do it on the weekends. You're still doing it, okay? It's not an occasional thing. Like drinking, they say, is more occasional because it doesn't have the long-lasting residual side effects on your body like narcotics do. Most narcotics will. Long-term effects. And I said, well, is that also becoming a dominating factor for us in Gilbert that you don't hear about? And with it being more religious based, that might be something they would keep under the wraps. And she said, no, it's not like a drug problem or anything like that. I'm like, just so there's not like some new, blue pill or something that, just thinking of something that could be making people crazy. And if you guys know where I'm leading it, but she said no. She goes, just all of a sudden, and then she's been doing a residency out here for a few years now in Arizona. She said it's almost the same. She gets almost the same amount of crazy as she did when she was in Texas, but with Texas and even in West Virginia, it was drug induced, the crazy. And she said, and here, it's happening really, really frequently and a lot more often within the last few years. I said, would you say like going back maybe 4 or 5, 6 years? And she said, yeah, it's probably about right. And I was like, huh. I turned back and I looked at my wife, and we both first equally thought, wow, it's a Mandela effect, right? Or the quantum effect. Now, not that people, and perhaps they are, but not thinking it from the perspective of someone just being out of their mind, but perhaps coming into the awakened state of awareness, and them their conscious not being able to cope with it. If you think about it, and I know probably a couple of you guys have gone through it. I know that my wife and I both independently of each other had gone through it a little bit, and then even together after we talked about it, we both individually had still kind of had that bout of crazy, thinking that we're crazy. But if you think about it, if someone has no coping mechanism for it, and all of a sudden, let's get past the minor logo changes, that other stuff, but let's go into the deeper things, like when buildings are there that weren't there before, objects disappearing and moving over to a new area. We'll get item teleportation, or teleportation, but item, teleportation, I guess is a way to call it. But we used to always get just a smidge of it here and there, and you would chalk it off to this or you would chalk it off to that, but it was never ingrained as being a situation. And now it's like a mainstream happening. And if you are not consciously strong in spirit, the awareness of this stuff could drive you insane. And especially if you got introduced down the rabbit hole, right? If you all of a sudden found out a little bit about it, like with the Mandela Effect movie just coming out, and someone started doing some research, and if you're not strong, if your will is not strong, it could be like overloading on crack to where it could cause you to have a mental breakdown. The other possibility is maybe if we're in a program simulation type thing, or if we're being, they're altering past, or they're sending out signals to cause these different mass confusion entities, or whatever's going on. Perhaps the merging, in my opinion, the merging of realities, or us jumping into a different reality, perhaps this person's consciousness and the consciousness that was in the vessel that he came into existence in collided, and it caused like a split personality disorder. And now thinking deeper of it, maybe that's what split personality disorder has always been. It's just always been multidimensional overlap, right? Your conscious energy from one and a conscious being of energy from another coming together, and you get this bipolar opposition. And take it into multi-personalities, like not just two, but like 3, 4, 5 personalities. Perhaps that's a merging of multi-yous, multi-selves, and everyone's battling to try to be the dominant conscious in that vessel at the time. Everyone could have their opinion about it, and everyone could say whatever they want to say, but if you really just step back and you think about it for a second, how out of the realm of possible is it? More so, it's probably very, very likely than anything else. So, anyways, we went through all that stuff. We saw the doctor, and then got put out in the front waiting room for almost another hour and a half. It was like 2.5 hours. Then we got to the back room, to the back corridor, and we were back there for about an hour, maybe give or take. And we went back to the front room for almost 2 hours. It's like, oh crap, we were there for like 5 hours. So kind of a suck fest, but and I'm sure I'll get the nice healthy bill to quantify that. Is, well, you were there for 5 hours, therefore we're going to bill you $500 an hour, or the insurance company, anyways. But yeah, I just found that whole. I mean, I hate hospitals in general. I just hate hospitals. I don't like them. I don't. It comes back for me into the mental state of, if you think about something, then you can bring about something. So if you're focused intently on something around you, then it comes into your life, comes into existence. Focus on wealth. You surround yourself with wealth, you can then become wealthy. You surround yourself with poverty, so on and so forth. You surround yourself with sickness, with health, all those things. So I always try to stay personally away from that environment, just because I don't want to invite the sickness into my life. So that's where I stand on all that. But let me know in the comments section below if you have experienced anything similar to that. If you're being told that by hospitals, if you guys have frequent hospitals, or even your family practitioners or anything else. John, if you get to watch this video with your beautiful wife there, let me know what her comment section, comments are on that, being as she's in the nursing field. I don't know if it'll reach you even, or reach your stream or not, but if it does, see if Shell is having these same experiences at the hospitals or medic offices, where she works at. So anyhow, yeah, I just felt moved to do this video because of my experience today. I mean, it was, like we talk about, nothing happens for just a random reason. Not to say that everything that happened to draw us to go to the hospital was intentional, just so that we can get that information from the hospital. I just, you talk about, coincidences of timing, of, hey, this happened, we had to go to the hospital because of it then, and everything else. Now, it could have been that this was always going to happen, where we'd always have to go to the hospital, but it didn't occur physically until today. Now, the only other part of that is perhaps the illness wasn't never part of our life, because last night we had gone to bed feeling perfectly 100% fine, normal, no issues whatsoever, and then all of a sudden this morning there was issues, and it required a trip to a doctor at the least. And being the weekend on a Sunday, there was no doctors open or available, so the hospital it was. And perhaps that is the way it had to be. So anyhow, I don't know the answers to that, but I did know that on the way to the hospital, I got a ping on my phone that it said Kobe Bryant was in a helicopter accident, or a helicopter crash. So when I hit the go to look, check it out on Google, of course it was a CNN clip, and I had looked at Sportsnet and a whole bunch of other things. Well, apparently sometime this morning, like right around 9 o'clock this morning in LA, Kobe Bryant was in a helicopter with, they say, 9 people total, including himself, and it had gone down, and there was no survivors. So those of you who never follow sports, Kobe Bryant is a big time basketball player in LA, and they equate him to a Michael Jordan-esque type of player, and he's still in his prime. So some people would say he's past it, but he was, for the most part, in his prime. And that was really, really out of left field, that whole situation there too. So anyhow, that's my thoughts of the whole thing, and my stand on the whole thing. Until the next time, and again, it's weird times that we live in. It's weird worlds that we live in. You know, this existence, this life is. It's different. It's different than I thought it was going to be when I was growing up. It's not the same adult experience that I was told I would have by my parents, right? And that I thought I would have by any means. It's very, very unique. So, anyhow, until the next time, I, of course, have been your host, Scott Schaefer, and you've been watching a Theory of Nothing video. And, you know, be safe and keep your mind open and pay attention. And let me know. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you want to do. I mean, I've had a few subscribers in a couple of my last videos that have asked me to check out some videos they've done, so I intend on doing that. And then I will give them some feedback as to what I think about stuff like that. So it's just kind of interesting, you know, an interesting situation, interesting times. So talk to you guys later.